But I expect that even though we may not worry about what we have to eat today, most of us, or enough to wear, if we dig a little deeper into this reality of dependence, of surrendering to God, most of us here still worry about having enough. Enough for our retirement? Enough for maybe Christmas? Are we doing enough? Enough for the future, enough health, enough whatever it is. Enough courage, enough strength, or enough patience to deal with whatever is facing us. And the list can go on and on. Worry seems to be part of a human condition. I recall the first lesson we could have read. But the Hebrews, Israelites, who had been freed from slavery, set free from Egypt and the oppression of Pharaoh, the Red Sea crossing, and now in the wilderness, but in that marvelous depiction of human condition, we're complaining. Are we going to get enough to eat? Will we run out of water? I mean, God set us free, but... And then the clincher for me is, if you read the text in following Genesis and the Exodus, we don't even have a cucumber. It seems like quite a deal. We'd rather be laying bricks in bondage and have a cucumber for a late night's nap. Here we are set free. And of course, Moses, there's some wonderful texts about his anger, which meant he didn't go into the kingdom, or ultimately the promised land. But worry is that condition. I know that I've spent many times, and way too much time, worrying. Worrying about the past, things I can't change. Worrying about the present, things that I maybe should change and haven't changed. Worrying about the future, which again I can't change, but I still worry. At which Jesus provides that backdrop. Don't worry about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble on its own. In other words, Jesus is saying, don't worry, trust God. Absolutely. Wow. The author of our toolkit curriculum that we subscribe to, a preacher from Prince of Peace, Minneapolis, writes about the experience, the summer that they were married. And allow me to share this in their words. My faith was put to the test when I found out 2 weeks after our wedding that I had a large tumor in my abdomen that needed to be removed. I'll never forget hearing my doctor's voice over the phone when she said, "We won't know it's cancer until we take it out." If there's any word in the English language that could strike fear, I'm not sure what it is for you, but I think cancer is right up there. Even more than fiscal cliff, I think, in terms of politics or another election. If there's something that strikes fear in our hearts, cancer. The author goes on and describes, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 13. She had a radical mastectomy and was told that she had a 20% chance of living beyond the next 2 years. I was terrified. I was afraid that my mother, who I adored and admired, would die, and I, the eldest, would have to help raise my 2 sisters. Well, my mom defied the odds and lived well beyond what the doctors expected, but my fears and anxieties never stopped. In the back of my mind was always a nagging fear that my mom would have a recurrence of cancer. And in my last year of seminary, my fears came true. Right before I graduated, my mom died when her cancer spread to other parts of her body. The author goes on, 3 days after my mom's funeral, I went outside into my backyard. I was sad, of course. And I was crying that I was missing my mom. But somehow a mourning dove flew onto the deck and then hopped on the ground and came very close to me and was cooing. I felt God's comfort and peace come over me. It was as if God was telling me that my mom was okay and that I would be okay too. I went inside and looked up, mourning dove. It's actually spelled M-O-R. It comes in the morning. But I discovered it was actually spent for me, M-O-U, morning. It was good grief for me. At that time, God came and gave good grief with hope for the future. After my mom died, my fear shifted. I then began to worry that I, as now close to 30, would get cancer someday and wouldn't outlive the days of my mother. And then my doctor informed me this year that I might have cancer, with the blood tests that were taken routinely. And of course I thought immediately of my mother, who died when she was 57, I am 56. My greatest fear, dying from cancer, hit me right in my heart, right in my face. And during the last 3 weeks as I waited for surgery, I struggled with my fears, not knowing. Not knowing whether I had cancer or not. Not knowing what stage I was in. Not knowing. The author goes on to give some details what they did during the summer, going to the Y, meditating, spending more time with family than ever before. And then the image that I liked was, I felt God telling me to use the phrase, don't worry, trust me. On a particular morning I was using, as I had, the Psalms to read daily. And I was reading Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me beside green pasture. He restores my soul. A wonderful gift of Psalm 23. As I was reading, on the deck, a mourning dove came. Now that could be incidental or just coincidental, as she writes. But for me it was a sign. And then to finish the story, it was a good sign. My test and my subsequent surgery all came clear and clean. I am free from cancer at this point. But I know it's still in my family. But I'm trying to learn more. That God will take care of me each day. And when I hear the words, don't worry, trust God, I know I need to apply it to me. End of story. Maybe you or someone you love has a health condition that you're concerned about. Is it helpful to know? Don't worry, trust God. Within those issues in terms of transition that each of us may face in terms of our lifetime, or relationships that have gone wrong or gone delightful. All of that we know that we're relying upon God to provide care and cure and hope and healing. Can we hear the word, don't worry, trust God? Now one of the phrases you may not like, but mantra. And a mantra, a repeated phrase really, I mean you could say the Lord be with you, also with you as a mantra. It's a repeated phrase. It's something you can meditate upon. A phrase that I learned from a Catholic gentleman years ago. Brennan is his name. Abba, Father, I belong to you. And in the midst of some of my worries, that's been a phrase for me that has been very helpful. You don't have to memorize it, but you could. And he also taught me to breathe in when he said, and you can try it. Try breathing in. Abba, Father. You don't have to speak it out. In fact, there's not many people that can vocalize breathing in, but you can try it. I belong to you. So let's say I belong to you after you breathe in, thinking, Abba, Father. I belong to you. Try once more. I belong to you. In that same phrasing, breathe in thinking, don't worry, and breathe out saying, trust God. Trust God. Once more. Trust God. Maybe you are still worried about something at work or at school or at home. But God will remind you with every breath you take. Trust God. Just as God cares for the flower of the field and the birds of the air, God cares deeply for each of us. He comes to us in so many ways. You may not have a morning dove. It may be a phone call. It may be that cup of coffee in the morning. It may be that encouraging word or smile that you give and receive from family or friends or neighbors. Don't worry. Trust God. And invite you in the days ahead as you undoubtedly will face. Christmas is coming. Did you see the sign at the superstore? 52 more days. It drives me crazy. I don't need to remind you. Don't worry, trust God. For me, losing my son Joel through suicide slammed rigid fears into the brick wall of shock and loss. And it's a tribute to many of you, the support you give to our family and community. And past received signs, one for us is a butterfly. Unseasonal. Butterflies have come in our journey for our family on camping trips when there's no other insect flying but a butterfly. On cold days, late in the fall. Maybe just coincidental. God is not forgotten. Trust God. Through worship and music,